Imagine waking up one day with the realization that the thoughts running through your mind, the emotions you feel, and the decisions you make are not entirely your own. That beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, an intricate web of unconscious forces is silently shaping your reality. Every belief you hold, every impulse you follow, and even the way you perceive yourself. What if all of this has been influenced by something deeper, something hidden? Carl Jung believed that the human psyche is not just a collection of thoughts and experiences, but a vast, complex landscape filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. He argued that most people go through life without ever truly understanding the forces at work within them. They mistake their conditioned responses for genuine choices, their socially constructed identities for their true selves. But what if I told you that the key to unlocking your full potential lies not in creating a new version of yourself, but in uncovering the one that has been hidden all along? Stay with me, because as we peel back the layers of the unconscious mind, you will come to see why most people never truly understand themselves, and how you can break free. From the moment we are born, we are shaped by forces beyond our control. We inherit beliefs, adopt societal norms, and unconsciously absorb expectations from our families, culture, and environment. Without realizing it, we construct an identity based on what is accepted and rewarded, discarding parts of ourselves that do not fit the mold. Jung believed that this process of conditioning creates what he called the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. It is the version of ourselves we present to the world, designed to gain approval and avoid rejection. The persona helps us navigate social structures, but it comes at a cost. The more we identify with this mask, the further we drift from our authentic self. And then there is the other side, the shadow. Everything we suppress, every trait we deny, every emotion we refuse to acknowledge gets pushed into the unconscious. But the shadow does not simply disappear. It lingers beneath the surface, influencing our behaviors, shaping our fears, and even dictating the choices we make. Jung warned that ignoring the shadow does not free us from its grip. It only makes its influence more dangerous. It seeps into our interactions, manifests in our reactions to others, and creates internal conflicts that we struggle to understand. But what if I told you that within the shadow lies the key to true self-discovery? That by confronting what you have rejected, you could reclaim the lost pieces of yourself. The shadow reveals itself in ways we rarely recognize. Have you ever found yourself irrationally annoyed by someone's behavior? Have you ever judged others harshly for traits you claim to despise? Jung proposed that when we feel an intense emotional reaction towards someone else, whether anger, envy, or resentment, it is often because they reflect something hidden within us. This is projection, a defense mechanism in which the unconscious mind externalizes its own suppressed traits onto others. For example, someone who suppresses their own ambition may resent those who are openly driven. A person who fears vulnerability may criticize others for being too emotional. These reactions are not coincidences. They are signposts pointing to the unresolved parts of our psyche. The shadow does not exist to sabotage us. It exists to be acknowledged, integrated, and understood. But here's where most people go wrong. They spend their lives avoiding their shadow rather than facing it. They distract themselves with external validation, numbing routines, and endless distractions, all to avoid looking inward. The irony is that what they avoid the most holds the power to set them free. Because when you confront the parts of yourself you've denied, something remarkable happens. You begin to integrate them, and in doing so, you step closer to wholeness. So the real question is, are you ready to face what's been hiding in the depths of your unconscious? Because once you do, you will never see yourself the same way again. Jung believed that true transformation begins when we stop running from ourselves and start embracing the full spectrum of who we are. This process, what he called individuation, is not about self-improvement in the conventional sense. It is not about becoming someone new or better. Instead, it is about becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Individuation requires deep introspection. It demands that we turn inward and examine the fears, desires, and forgotten aspects of ourselves that we have long buried. This is not an easy path. It is uncomfortable, unsettling, and at times, even painful. But it is also the only way to break free from the unconscious forces that control us. Think about it. How often do we avoid silence? How often do we keep ourselves busy, constantly consuming information, entertainment, or distractions just to avoid being alone with our thoughts. This avoidance is not random. It is a defense mechanism, a way of keeping our unconscious mind at bay. But no matter how much we ignore it, the unconscious does not go away. It influences our choices, our relationships, and even our emotional responses. Jung suggested that the unconscious is always speaking to us, but we have been trained to ignore its messages. Our dreams, our instincts, even the patterns that repeat in our lives, these are not meaningless coincidences. They are signals from the deeper self, waiting to be understood. The moment we stop running and start listening, we begin to reclaim control over our own psyche. And with that, we take the first real step towards self-realization. But why do so many people resist this journey? Why do we fear our own unconscious mind? The answer lies in the ego, the part of the psyche that constructs our sense of identity. The ego defines who we believe we are, shaping our thoughts, behaviors, and perceptions. It creates a clear boundary between me and not me, between what is acceptable and what must be suppressed. While the ego serves an important purpose, it also limits us. It clings to the familiar, avoiding anything that threatens its carefully constructed sense of self. This is why confronting the unconscious feels so uncomfortable. It challenges the very foundation of our identity. We are forced to question long-held beliefs, acknowledge uncomfortable truths, and accept that we are not as in control as we once thought. Jung argued that real freedom comes when we stop letting the ego dictate our reality. Instead of fearing the unknown parts of ourselves, we must learn to integrate them. The goal is not to destroy the ego, but to expand it, allowing it to work in harmony with a deeper self rather than against it. The moment you stop resisting, the moment you allow yourself to explore beyond the limits of your conditioned identity, you open the door to something far greater. You begin to understand that you are not just a collection of past experiences, not just a product of societal expectations. You are something much more complex, something infinitely deeper. And this realization changes everything. Jung believed that within each of us exist universal psychological patterns, archetypes, that shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways we barely recognize. These archetypes reside in what he called the collective unconscious, a deep reservoir of inherited wisdom shared by all of humanity. They appear in myths, dreams, and even the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. One of the most powerful archetypes is the hero. This is the part of you that longs for purpose, that seeks to overcome obstacles and grow into something greater. The hero's journey is one of transformation, but it does not come without struggle. Every hero must face an opposing force, the shadow, the repressed fears and weaknesses that stand in the way of true growth. Think about a time when you knew you needed to change but found yourself resisting. A moment when you had an opportunity to grow but fear or self-doubt held you back. This is the battle between the hero and the shadow playing out within you. Most people avoid this confrontation, choosing comfort over self-discovery. But Jung argued that the only way forward is through. Rather than rejecting the shadow, we must integrate it. Instead of seeing our weaknesses as flaws, we must recognize them as hidden strengths. For example, deep-seated insecurity can be a sign of untapped self-awareness. Fear of failure can be transformed into the drive to improve. By acknowledging and working with these aspects of ourselves, we unlock a greater sense of wholeness. This is the essence of individuation, not the elimination of our darker traits, but their transformation. And once we begin to see ourselves in this new light, the world around us starts to change as well. But archetypes go beyond just the hero and the shadow. Within you, there are other forces at play. Powerful, often unnoticed patterns that shape your thoughts, relationships, and personal growth. One of the most crucial is the balance between the anima and animus. Jung believed that within every man exists a hidden feminine aspect, the anima, and within every woman, a hidden masculine aspect, the animus. These are not about gender in a biological sense, but rather about the deeper energies within us. The anima represents intuition, emotion, creativity, and connection to the unconscious, while the animus embodies logic, assertiveness, structure, and discipline. When these energies are in balance, a person feels whole and integrated. But when they are ignored or repressed, inner conflict arises. A man who suppresses his anima may struggle to express emotions, fearing vulnerability as weakness. A woman who rejects her animus may find it difficult to assert herself, hesitating to take control of her own path. Society often reinforces these imbalances, encouraging men to disconnect from their emotions and women to doubt their strength. But Jung argued that true individuation requires embracing both sides. The more you integrate the aspects of yourself that you have ignored, the more complete you become. So ask yourself, are there parts of your psyche that you have neglected? Have you suppressed qualities that could bring you closer to wholeness? Because the journey to self-discovery is not about becoming something new, it's about reclaiming what was always within you. But there is one final revelation, one last illusion that must be confronted before true self-discovery can take place. The greatest obstacle to finding yourself is not just fear, not just the shadow, not even societal conditioning. It is something far more elusive, something embedded in the very way we perceive reality. The illusion of a fixed self. Most people go through life believing they are a single, unchanging identity, a static being defined by past experiences, memories, and external labels. But Jung, along with many great philosophers and mystics, understood that the self is not something rigid. It is fluid, evolving, and far greater than we have been led to believe. What if the version of you that you identify with today is only a fragment of something much larger? What if the self you think you are is merely the surface of a vast, interconnected consciousness that stretches beyond time and personal experience? Jung called this the self, not the ego-driven self that clings to labels and fears, but the deeper, infinite totality of who you truly are. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. It means that the limits you've placed on yourself, the stories you tell about who you are, what you can or cannot do, are just constructs. The fears and doubts that have held you back are not immutable truths, but temporary barriers created by the mind. So the final question is this: will you continue to live within the boundaries of the self you've been conditioned to accept? Or will you step beyond them, embracing the full, limitless potential of who you were always meant to be? Because once you see beyond the illusion, there is no going back.